Welcome everyone to Trend Micro Talks. I am your host, Erin Tomie, and today we're talking to Trend Micro's Technical Director of Federal, David Abramowitz. David, how are you doing today?
Hello, Erin. I am feeling good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm very happy to have you here. I would love to just start with you sharing a bit about your role here at Trend Micro.
Sure. So I'm currently the technical director for Federal. I'm also involved in some strategy and international relations as we try to get our threat intelligence and other technologies out globally and collaborate with other governments in other countries as well.
Well, Dave, you've been at Trend Micro for a fairly long period of time. You actually became a trender in 1997. I would love to hear, how did you hear about Trend Micro? What were the first couple years like as a trender in the early to late 90s?
It was quite a step in a different direction. So, whereas I came from a background of software development, doing a lot of programming and interface design, that really wasn't the itch that needed scratching for me. A friend of mine wound up bumping into the then director of sales for the East for Trend Micro in '97 in the cleaners. And she knew that I was looking for something different. At the time, I was with IBM. And he told her, we're looking for a sales engineer here in the eastern part of the US, which was at that point anything east of the Mississippi. So one person. And she knew my personality and said, I got the perfect guy for you, and made the marriage and got the interview and started in 1997, back when there was no such thing as an email attachment with a virus. So it was interesting times. So that's how I came to Trend Micro.
I want to just ask, in 1997, in the late 90s, what was the main threat, cyber attack, like that Trend Micro and other security vendors were protecting against?
There wasn't too much back then. If you think about what the intent was back in those years of the mischief makers, we'll call them, it was just to deface a website or to put something funny on your screen, really just to gain the satisfaction that they had caused some nonsense. It was very just little bits of mischief and annoying things, but certainly nothing for mass financial gain, say.
So, touching on that a little bit, now at Trend in 2023, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen? You mentioned kind of how threats have evolved, and also what has stayed the same.
Nothing's changed really. Well, if you look at some of the big attacks, what we're seeing again, attacks against infrastructure and how serious those are becoming. Ransomware. Not only am I going to steal your information and encrypt it so that you can't get at it, I'm now going to figure out how much money your company makes, and I'm going to adjust my ransom accordingly. And we'll just keep going at this until I have your money, etc. So it's very, very different in terms of the threat landscape. I mean, you would never have thought, back in the late 90s, when email and attachments were first going, you would never even think that there was anything you needed to worry about. Or if there was something you needed to worry about, you'd actually have to physically open the attachment and click on something in there, and this and that and this and that. Whereas today, you don't have to click on anything to be infiltrated and infected and taken over and that kind of thing. So I think there are a lot more attacks now that are really focused on all of the weaknesses, all of the vulnerabilities that are in all the software we use. So many applications have become so prolific. That's a tough word to say, Aaron. Prolific now, and with the cloud and services in the cloud and applications being hosted in the cloud. So all of the things that we're using to do our daily work and all the different technologies are all points of potential attack, and that just wasn't the case back in the late 90s.
Yeah, I feel like the just number of attack vectors has kind of exploded. And that's the main thing. And then also the piece about motivation of what people are actually trying to do compared to kind of small potatoes, maybe more on the prank kind of things when things were first getting started. Switching a bit to look at the culture side of Trend Micro. Do you remember how many people were at Trend when you started in the 90s?
Whew. Well, we all fit in one little office in Cupertino, so I don't know that it was more than 20 to tell you the truth.
Okay, so Trend Micro's culture, 20 people to now we're I think pushing 7,500. How has that evolved from when you started?
It's interesting because we still have the same person, Eva Chen, at the helm. She's been here since 1988 when the company started. And I think she's always stayed true to what she was looking for in people. And I think it comes down to not so much focusing on what's on your resume, what certifications you have, and that sort of thing. She really likes to get to the core of who you are, who you are as a person, what drives you, what are your values, what are your ethics, and to find people that sort of fit the trender mode, as we call them, right? So there seems to be pretty consistent, a pretty consistent look and feel, if you will, to people that work here, and it's a very collaborative environment. It's a very how can I help you environment. It's very low in ego, right? There are not a lot of egos, and it's really everyone pulling in the same direction for the same thing. And I think that comes from the top. And so having the consistency of Eva for the 35 plus years, I think really speaks to the culture itself, and that it's been consistent because it comes from her.
I think it's a special thing to have that consistency for so long. And I also think it's something to be proud of that the culture has stayed the same. It had that very strong base when the company was started, that the culture stayed the same. But obviously, the products we're selling we've innovated upon them. They're very different from what you probably started selling when you started. So it's not like that consistent culture has prevented us from being an innovative company that's constantly, updating products, making sure that we're keeping up with those threats that, as you said, have been expanding.
Yeah, not at all. And I think that comes from Eva being technical in nature, right? So she's always kind of had her hands in the development of products and new ideas, because that's just her background and what she comes from. And I think that that helps keep things consistent as well.
Dave, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I really appreciate your time. This has been very interesting. I loved it. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Erin. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and you have a good day too.